Okay, guys, it is time for this week's interview section. I'm really excited to bring this guy on, a guy that I met through Twitter, big time wrestling fan. Please welcome the Fully Bearded Nerd to the podcast. Bro, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Wes?
Not bad, man. I'm like I said, I'm really excited to have you on. Get to talk a little bit about Bam Bam Bigelow. Before we move on, though, man, hey, go ahead and plug your social medias. Let the people know where to find you.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on Twitter at Full Beard Nerd. That's where you'll find all my little memes and wrestling talk and everything. As the name implies, I also do a lot of talk about beards as well. You can find all of that on YouTube. Fully Bearded Nerd is my channel on there, and I do a lot of beard product reviews. And then on Instagram at Fully Bearded Nerd.
Awesome. Make sure you guys are keeping up with him on all the social medias, bro. Like I said, I'm really excited that you were here to join me. You're a first time guest on the podcast, and what I usually do with first time guests on the podcast is I ask you a few wrestling questions just to so I could get to know you a little bit better, and so my listeners could get to know you a little bit better. So that being said, let's kick it off, man. Let me ask you, what's your favorite wrestling era? If you could only pick one, what I'm saying, one era to watch on a loop from now until the end of time, which one would it be?
It's got to be the late '90s, the Monday Night War era. WCW, WWE, just going to war with each other. Even when WCW was bad, it was good. Every once in a while, I'll just go on the network and turn on one of the worst WCW pay-per-views I can find, just because it was still good to see all of the talent that they had. Um, I wish we could get back to that era where you had competition, and it looks like we're heading that way now, of course, with AEW becoming profound. And man, I really hope we get back to that point, because that's when wrestling was definitely at its best.
Oh, bro, that makes two of us. I'm really hopeful that AEW, is able to compete with WWE, and I grew up in that era as well, so that's some of the fondest memories that I have come from the Attitude Era. Although it's not my personal favorite, I fell in love with pro wrestling in the New Generation era. Brett, Shawn, Taker, all those guys. But second place, barely in second place, is the Attitude Era. So I'm definitely right there with you. Let me ask you though, do you still keep up with the current product? I mean, you already dropped AEW reference, so I'm pretty sure you do.
For sure. Man, about a month ago was the first time that I actually, probably since 1997, have on my own decided to turn off an episode of Raw, just because of how bad it was. But yeah, I mean, I keep up with wrestling regularly. That is my thing. I do not miss anything. Like I said, it really hurts me to say that I've actually decided not to watch it lately because it's been so bad. But hopefully we can get back to the greatness that it once was. AEW, definitely Double or Nothing was amazing. Every single match, and just everything in the indies right now is great. I support a lot of local indie wrestling promotions around here. I live out on the East Coast, so of course, you can't go 10 miles without bumping into an indie federation around here. So there is still good wrestling out there.
Awesome segue, bro. Out of all that great wrestling, who would you say is your favorite current day performer? It doesn't have to be WWE, doesn't have to be AEW, New Japan, it could be anything, anybody. Who would you say would be?
Wow, my favorite current day. I'm a huge fan of Aleister Black. His in-ring presence, his look, just everything about him. I think if done properly, he could definitely be a major player for many years to come. Yeah, definitely Aleister Black at the moment. He's got a good future going for him.
Oh yeah, man. I love that answer. Aleister Black is a great performer. I was lucky enough. I'm from the West Coast. I'm here in California, so I was lucky enough. Last year, I got to catch Gargano and Aleister Black at War Games, and fuck, man, what a match! The energy in that building was off the charts. And yeah, I agree, dude. If Aleister Black, that's the key word, right? With the key phrase with when you're talking about NXT call-ups or just anybody new coming into the WWE system in general is if booked properly. You know what I'm saying? Which is so. It's like a small caveat, that you throw on stuff, but it's the difference between, being a star and being a mid carder, or a guy like, no disrespect, a guy that I love, Tyler Breeze, where you end up having to come back to NXT because the main roster Vince just didn't understand him. So I'm right there with you, dude. I like Aleister Black. I think he's a hell of an in-ring talent. I don't really get what they're trying to do with him right now. Like, I get the whole dark, menacing angle that they're kind of trying to go for, but to me, and I've said this before on a prior episode when I did my WrestleMania preview and recap, to me, if they're trying to make him like a heel, which it kind of seems like they might be trying to do, I don't know. The easiest route would have been for him to turn on Ricochet. Like, I don't understand why they're like, WWE gets in their own way sometimes. Vince McMahon likes to overproduce and like to overcomplicate things. Where if they really wanted him to go heel, it's a ready-made feud, in my opinion. You could have had him turn on Ricochet at WrestleMania or the night after on Raw, and then there you go, dude. Ricochet and Aleister Black are feuding on the main roster now, and I think that would have elevated both guys.
For sure. And like you said, and like I originally stated, it all depends on how they book him. And I think that's what mostly frustrates us, a lot of the internet wrestling community as fans, is just we see the greatness in all of this talent, because every single wrestler, no matter what we think of them, they're all talented. I've personally have stepped inside a wrestling ring, and I can tell you it definitely takes a certain type of individual to perform at that level. And just to see what WWE does to some of these guys and what they put them through, and it's got to be just devastating to them to see what happens to their career after creative gets a hold of them and just drives them down. So yeah, hopefully all goes well for Aleister Black and they do him right, but only time will tell.
Only that's what I was gonna say. Only time will tell, because John Moxley didn't do the company, or what I'm saying, like the perception of the company, any favors when he went on Talk Is Jericho and pretty much confirmed what we were all thinking, that Vince is just is
exactly
just losing his touch, dude. He lost touch with reality a long time ago, but for whatever reason, it still managed to work for him. At this point, he's losing his touch, and I honestly think we're on the verge of watching a fucking monumental spin-off. Like, as far as Vince is about to lose control of the wrestling business even faster than we all realize, and I think it's going to cause some real interesting things to go down in WWE and to go down in general in the wrestling business. So I'm kind of excited for where we are, dude. I think AEW was definitely the shot in the arm that the business needed, and like I said, I'm super excited for it. But
definitely.
Hey, man,
and as much respect as I has for Vince, if it does spiral out and downward and just goes badly for him, he has no one to blame but himself at this point. He's Vince screwed Vince, so to speak. So yeah, definitely, we'll see.
Yeah, dude, I'm 100% with you. I thank Vince because he gave us this universe that we all, like, whether we hate it or love it, most of us love it more than we hate it, or else we wouldn't be coming back constantly. But he did it to himself, dude. His arrogance, you talk about, for his much of a genius as Vince is, like, he's had a lot of bad shit. He's had a lot of horrible ideas, but somehow the good always outweighed the bad. And we're getting to the point now where it's just like, dude, the bad is massive. Like, his track record is just, you're piling on more and more failures. Like, every single NXT call up that comes up and doesn't make it it goes on him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's proven at this point. Like, the formula is proven. Triple H makes them the star in NXT. Vince has no control over them, no influence over them. As soon as they come up to the main roster, you know what I'm saying? Like, they flounder. And then you look at a guy like Tyler Breeze, who just recently came back to NXT, and he's already having great matches with Velveteen Dream. Like, he's having matches that remind people, like, oh, that's why he was a star. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's just a bad look for Vince, man. And unfortunately, I think we're all tuned in to a car crash. We're gonna see this isn't end pretty, in my opinion, at least. With Vince McMahon, it's not gonna end. It's not gonna end well. But hey, man, let's try to refocus on flashback, on a little bit of retro.
Definitely.
Right? That's my bad, dude. We spin off. It's gonna happen. Let me ask you though, who would you say is your favorite all-time performer? You could only pick one guy. Who would it be?
All time, it's definitely got to be Roddy Piper, the Hot Rod. Man, there will be never ever be another like him on the microphone, in the ring. Just his entire presence. It was just one of a kind. There was no holding him back. Once you put that microphone in his hand, he just shredded anybody into pieces, which was great. And his in-ring performance was just, especially in his prime, he was just so laser focused in the ring. It was great, and he's definitely missed in today's wrestling world. Just the way he was and his intensity. Wrestling could definitely use more of that intensity now.
Oh, I absolutely agree, man, and I love that answer. I always like asking people this question, especially when you guys are, new guests, because I love to see, I'm saying, like, what influenced you guys, or kind of, because to ask somebody who their favorite wrestler is kind of like asking someone what their favorite food is, or I'm saying, like, their favorite type of music. Like, you kind of get an insight into that person by who they choose to cheer for the most. And hey, man, I love that answer. So I've had a lot of crazy ones and a lot of different ones. I'm a Bret Hart guy myself, but Roddy Piper's definitely one of my favorites too. I mean, nobody could cut a promo like the Hot Rod. He invented the pipe bomb. I love CM Punk, but Piper's the one that invented the pipe bomb, man. But hey, dude, I'm glad we got to know you a little bit better. Hopefully that helps my listeners, get a little bit more of a sense for you. Because we're gonna talk about Bam Bam Bigelow. This is the first episode of my Gone Too Soon arc. We're gonna be, touching on some performers that unfortunately left this planet a little bit too early, and before they, with a lot left to accomplish, at least we'll put it that way. And unfortunately, Bam Bam is one of those guys. A lot of people should probably notice about Bam Bam. He was trained in the Monster Factory, the world famous Monster Factory by Larry Sharp. Debuted in 1986 in the Continental Wrestling Association, and he even worked in WCCW for a little bit. He had a Russian gimmick back then. I think it was like Crusher Yurkov or something like that. But everything culminates for him when he makes it to the WWF. He arrives there in May of '87, but gets kept off the TV until the fall. They did a similar thing with Warrior, apparently. But everybody expected him to be a heel. You look at him and you kind of think, immediately this guy's a heel. He's got heel written all over him. But surprisingly, they go a different route with him. They kind of borrow a little bit of the Randy Savage storyline when he first comes in, where all the heel managers are like vying for his services or to see who's going to be his manager. Same as what they did with Savage, and where Savage went and got Miss Elizabeth and threw a curveball at everybody. Bam Bam goes a different route. He goes with Oliver Humperdinck, and he goes babyface. So that in and of itself is kind of a big surprise. He has few pretty big runs or pretty big important matches, or like kind of mainstream important matches. He's in the first Survivor Series. He actually outlasts Hulk Hogan in the first Survivor Series, eventually losing to Andre the Giant. He loses to the One-Man Gang at WrestleMania 4 via countout, and pretty much those are the highlights of his first WWF run. What did you think, man, of that first WWF run? Like, what were your overall impressions of
that? You know what? I honestly don't remember this run from Bam Bam. This was a time of my life where wrestling was there, but it was kind of in the background. It's not something I was watching, on a weekly basis or all the time. It was just, this was the late 80s. I think I was maybe 8 years old. And, I had my Ultimate Warrior wrestling buddy and watched Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling and all that stuff, but it wasn't as focal in my life. And especially the part seeing that Oliver Humperdinck was his manager at this time, it was just like, wow, I do not recall this at all. But you could definitely tell that WWE had big plans for Bam Bam at this time. Just the fact that he outlasted Hulk Hogan in that Survivor Series match tells you that they definitely wanted to go somewhere with him, and they liked his look. So if this first run would have really lasted and he didn't get that knee injury, man, it would have been interesting to see where they went with him at this time.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. The funny thing, or I guess the weird thing that I got from this whole thing was him being a babyface. Like, that's kind of, counterintuitive, I would say, to what Vince would have gone. Like, you think in that era, you see a guy like Bam Bam pushing over 400 pounds, tattoos on the head, intimidating. You would have thought he'd be the perfect foil for Hogan. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could have seen him and Hogan having, doing the tours all over the country, and selling out a bunch of arenas, just going up against each other. Because to me, he's like the perfect counterpart to Hogan. Like, he's Hogan's type. You know what I'm saying? So I just thought that was a little weird that they didn't really follow through with that. Another thing that I found really interesting doing my research is he turned down Jimmy Hart, believe it or not. Apparently the original plans for Bam Bam was for him to be a heel and for Jimmy Hart to be his manager. And apparently he nixed that himself and did not want to be. He thought his appeal would be better as a babyface. And one of the things that I found funny or crazy about that is that, you know, you live in a world, like, can you imagine that nowadays? Like a new talent comes in or gets called up or anything like that, anything of the sort, and they decide, like, they veto it. Like, that's crazy, almost unthinkable in today's WWE, that somebody would tell Vince, no, I'm gonna be a babyface or a heel. But Bam Bam did it back in the day, dude, where you know, I just think it's kind of crazy. But yeah, man, to your point, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened with Bam Bam had that knee injury not, you know, kind of derailed his original run. Because after that, he does a short run in Jim Crockett Promotions, but mainly for the years where he's gone from WWE up till his return in '92, he spends them in Japan, man. He's actually a former IWGP Tag Team Champion with Big Van Vader, which, if you guys can imagine,
that's a tag team right there, man.
Exactly, man. Man, could you imagine just being any Japanese team or any team in general and standing across the ring from fucking Bam Bam and Vader? Like, I don't even know who beat them.
Yeah, I actually, doing my research, I actually found some footage of a match where they were teaming together, and yeah, man, just Vader with his, you know, whole Vader mask set up, and Bam Bam with the tattooed head and everything. That was just an amazing looking tag team. They look like they could have taken on the world at that time.
Exactly. One of the, you know, one of the most intimidating tag teams just from pure like look standpoint. Like, if you see those guys walking down to the ring, you're like, oh shit, you know, shit's about to get real right now, because those guys were intimidating, two behemoths, you know what I'm saying, like, in every sense of the word. But his time in Japan, surprisingly, it's I mean, he's an IWGP Tag Champ, but you would think, to me, I would have thought it'd be a little more lucrative, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would have thought he'd be more in the main event picture, kind of similar to Vader, but it doesn't really go down that way as much. Like I said, he has success in Japan, and it's very lucrative for him financially, but he eventually ends up returning to WWF in 1992. This time he does come back as a heel. WrestleMania 9, doing my research, I didn't know about this. WrestleMania 9 is the first wrestling exposure that I ever have. I think I was like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. And somebody put on a VHS of WrestleMania 9, and I fell in love with wrestling from that point on. I mentioned that because doing my research, I found out that WrestleMania 9 was supposed to have another match scheduled on it. Supposed to be Kamala versus Bam Bam Bigelow, and obviously it was canceled and it didn't make air. But man, could you imagine what that match would have been like? Bam Bam Bigelow versus Kamala at WrestleMania?
That would have definitely been a clash of just two monsters in the ring. Did you find out why it was canceled? Did you?
Yeah,
I didn't see that anywhere.
Yeah,
those
they
damn time restraints.
Yeah, there was just and the comment and the reaction that I mostly got from it was like, oh yeah, because we really needed to see Cleopatra and Julius Caesar make their intro. You know what I'm saying? Like, they could have
definitely.
They could have trimmed in other places. I would have been. And apparently, the Bob Backlund and Razor Ramon match, that's why it was so quick as well, because of, you know, I guess they're lucky that they made it on, because that was another match. If they would have gone if any matches would have gone a little longer, that would have been, I guess, the next match to get bumped. But
well,
yeah,
WrestleMania is like 28 hours long now, so if that was going on today, we definitely wouldn't have had that issue. Dude, we would have got like a hour and a half long Bam Bam and Kamala match
on the pre-show too. That's probably
on the pre-show.
Dude, they put so many good matches on the pre-show nowadays that I'm just like, man, what's the point? But but not to fear for Bam Bam, because next year at WrestleMania 10, he would be on the main show. He ends up having a match against Doink. Well, him and Luna Vachon team up and go against Dink and Doink. Apparently Bam Bam wasn't too happy about that. He wasn't really fond of the Doink feud. Doink had gone from pretty much being like a really breath of fresh air character to you know, after Matt Bourne ends up leaving, the character kind of goes into more of a comedic mid-card, you know what I'm saying, position. And so Bam Bam wasn't too happy about that, wasn't too happy about the match. In 94, though, he does join the $1 Million Corporation. He breaks up with Luna Vachon and goes with the $1 Million Corporation. Has a pretty lucrative run there.
Bad idea breaking him up with Luna. Man, that was my first memory of Bam Bam, really, was seeing him with Luna. And those two together just her craziness and her tattoos everywhere. Just it was a perfect accent to Bam Bam's look. She was a great valet for him. I was very upset to see when they broke those two up.
Oh yeah, absolutely, dude. You know what was one of my favorite parts of the Bam Bam and Luna combo was when she would come down, or when they would come down to the ring and be introduced. Howard Finkel would always introduce them with his main squeeze, Luna Vachon. Like, instead of saying,
wasn't
like,
that great?
that was
Yeah,
the
so good.
fucking best. That shit was the fucking best, dude. It always, like, as a kid, it just always made me, like, I don't know, just chuckle, or just like, I just thought it was cool, dude. And as an adult, I fucking love it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't,
And
you
you
don't hear
could
anybody.
see those two being together. They just worked together. Like they looked like they belonged as a unit. You know, like sometimes you see these a manager with somebody and it doesn't fit their look or their gimmick or their attitude. Luna fit perfectly with Bam Bam. It was two pieces of a puzzle that just fit together so perfectly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say, I mean, you're talking about managers and performers that don't fit. Oliver Humperdinck, you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's fucking out of left field when you really think about it. And out of the three managers that he has, because he has Humperdinck, he has Luna, and then obviously Ted DiBiase afterward. Dude, you hit the nail right on the head. Luna, the look matched. You know what I'm saying? Like, the whole, even like the dynamic of her being a woman but still being like a badass. Like, I just always loved that counterbalance that she brought to Bam Bam. It kind of like humanized him, but also kept him a badass at the same time. So I was
exactly.
I was a really big fan of that combo, dude, just like you. And I thought it was a big mistake as well when they broke up. I'm telling you, dude, like my first memories, just like you, of Bam Bam, they come with him being being valeted by Luna Vachon. So to me, that's the image I'll always have in my head, is Bam Bam and Luna. But let's be honest, the most lucrative and the most high profile that Bam Bam ever got is in the $1 Million Corporation, because at the 1995 Royal Rumble, after losing a tag team title match, the tag team titles were vacant, and Tatanka and Bam Bam ended up losing to the 1-2-3 Kid and Bob Sparkplug Holly. Bam Bam is being laughed at and kind of made a mockery of by LT at Lawrence Taylor, the New York Giant, at ringside, and it kind of breaks down into a little altercation. And here we go, man. We're on the road to WrestleMania 11. Probably one of the most like mind-blowing. Like, if you just look at every WrestleMania main event, you know what I'm saying? Like, they can all be a little odd and a little, this and that, but one always stands out, and it's WrestleMania 11. The main event of WrestleMania 11, Bam Bam Bigelow versus Lawrence Taylor. Bam Bam puts him over. Apparently, they hadn't even really decided yet that was going to be the main event. It wasn't supposed to be the main event until, rumor has it, until the day of the show. And Vince ended up deciding, like, yeah, man, you're going to close. You and Bam Bam are closing, or you and LT are closing. And man, I still think that's crazy, bro. Like, well, what did you think about the time? Because I was still a kid at the time, and I don't even really remember that Mania like that, as a kid. But I can imagine that must have been quite something to fucking.
It was a spectacle, definitely. I think this was the first WrestleMania that really elevated it to the level that it is today, where it became a spectacle. I mean, the hype around Lawrence Taylor stepping into a wrestling ring, it was everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. And just the fact that this was the main event, it wasn't an attraction match. This was the main event of WrestleMania. WrestleMania where you had Shawn Michaels versus Diesel. It was, and this was the main event. It was great, man. It brought so much hype around this WrestleMania, and Bam Bam carried Lawrence Taylor through that match so well. And just, man, for what it was, that was a great match considering everything. Lawrence Taylor had no kind of wrestling experience, and he was headlining, WrestleMania. If you go back and watch that match, it's amazing how well it went.
Oh, I completely agree, dude. You beat me to it. I was going to ask you what you thought of the match, because yeah, like you said, it's an anomaly. You don't see that. You can see us, Floyd Mayweather headlined WrestleMania. A lot of celebrities of, quote unquote headline WrestleMania, but Lawrence Taylor is the only one to actually close the show. And yeah, man, if in a vacuum, just, you know, you take all the bells and whistles off of that, you know, the spectacle of the match. If you just watch the match, it's actually not a bad match. It's a pretty decent match, and that's impressive when you think about, like you said, Lawrence Taylor had never stepped in a wrestling ring before. And, you know, with the exception of him getting a little gas there at the end, he was pretty fucking tired at the end. But with the exception of that, like, Lawrence Taylor outperformed anybody's expectations, in my opinion. Because even, you know, when I first went back and watched the match, obviously it was in hindsight, but, you know, you kind of have these notions already in your head of like, oh, he's a celebrity, he's an outsider, he's not gonna do great. And I'm a fucking asshole, dude. I'm the kind of guy where, like, I don't even like Ronda Rousey because I feel like she's an outsider to the business and stuff like that. Like, I'm really in the protecting the business and you know, outsiders don't belong. But Lawrence Taylor is one of the guys where I tip my hat, bro, because he delivered on the biggest stage too. This wasn't a Raw main event. This wasn't a SummerSlam or a Survivor Series. Like, it wasn't anything like that. It was the main event.
And he didn't overstay his welcome. It's not like he showed up on Raw and was like, "Hey, I'm coming for the WWE Championship now." You know.
Yeah, that's a great point, dude. He did not Mongo McMichael it. So I definitely agree with you. But after WrestleMania 11, for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, I guess I kind of understand.
Oh, we know the reason. We know the reason.
Yeah,
it's pretty well documented.
Yeah,
Bam Bam is even on an interview that the Click was not happy.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to allude to. They turn him face. Bam Bam goes face. Is not connecting with the audience for whatever reason. He gets kicked out of the $1 million corporation. DiBiase saying that he embarrassed them and blah blah blah. So he eventually goes face. He's being attacked by the corporation. Diesel saves him. He starts teaming with Diesel against like Tatanka and Sid and stuff like that. And it's just it's not working. He's not connecting with the fans for whatever reason. And then obviously, like you said, it's very well documented. Bam Bam has said it himself. A lot of people have gone out and said it. The Click was not happy with him. The Click wanted to hold him down. Look, dude, I'm not the biggest Shawn Michaels fan. Like, I will agree that he's probably a top 5 talent in the business ever if you're just talking strictly talent-wise. But I also recognize that Shawn Michaels has done a lot in the sense, like, almost in the same, you know, era as Hulk Hogan. Hogan did a lot to help the business, but also did a lot to hurt it. And Shawn, same way, bro. He did a lot for the business. We've had so many classic memories because of Shawn, but in the same light, he did a lot to hurt the business. Guys like Chris Candido, guys like Vader, guys like Bam Bam that were held down by the Click, by Shawn and his boys. And I don't know, man, like, it sucks and it leaves a sour taste in your mouth and leads to like a what if, you know what I'm saying? Like, what if Shawn wasn't around? Or what if Shawn just didn't have that much influence? What if the Click didn't have that much influence? What would have happened? Apparently, I'm sure you've heard of it, but one of the big things was, like, I guess they had a meeting one day and Vince, you know, was opening up the floor to people to say, you know, if they had any issues or concerns they wanted to talk about. And Bam Bam was actually ballsy enough to be like, hey, man, I don't like that Shawn and Razor are driving up and down the roads together. They're supposed to be feuding for the IC title. He's like, that's kind of breaking kayfabe. And obviously the Click was not too happy about that. Bam Bam warned Vince that, you know, it wasn't good for the business. And Vince was either too blind or too stubborn. Didn't think that, completely trusted the Click, in which we see what happens. You know what? Like I said, man, I'm in two different like states of mind with the Click. Like, I like them, I respect them. I think that they were important to the business. They helped revolutionize it, but at the same time, I do see the standpoint of, like, they killed the original version of the business. You know what I'm saying? Like, the whole breaking kayfabe, like, that should. I know right now, like, it doesn't mean as much to us because it's been so long since it's really been around like that. But at the time, that was sacrilege, you know, and they didn't give a fuck. They just did it. They shit on the wrestling business, and instead of punishing anybody or doing it, Vince, like, rewarded all of them.
Well, everyone except Triple H.
Well, yeah, exactly. Fucking Triple H. Well, I mean, Triple H was patient, and he got the ultimate reward at the end. Now he's gonna maybe take over the company.
Yes, he did.
But yeah, man, I never liked that. It always left a bad taste in my mouth. And Bam Bam is definitely one of those guys that, you know, was one of the main victims of the Click, because his second run was a lot more impressive. Like, you know, he got a lot more done in his second WWF run than he did in his first one. But again, you never know what could have been, what would have been, had the Click not had so much, you know, authority or so much influence backstage. But after leaving WWE, he goes and he becomes a pretty integral part of ECW. He's a former ECW world champion, former TV champion, 1/3 of the Triple Threat. The big, memories that everybody remembers is him slamming Taz through the ring and the stage, and then also throwing Spike Dudley into the crowd. That's one of the images that'll forever be burned into my mind. What did you think about Bam Bam's ECW run, though?
I think it was a perfect fit for him. Bam Bam, just that aggressive look, the aggressive style that he had, it really brought out the best in him. I was actually fortunate enough, being on the East Coast, to actually go to a house show where Bam Bam was performing and see a match. I believe it was him against Pitbull #2. And yeah, man, they tore the house down, and it was great to see him just fully unleash the beast inside and just do everything. You could tell that be as aggressive as he wanted to be.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, dude. Obviously, it's already very well documented. Shawn didn't like working snug. That's one of the reasons he hated Vader. So I can imagine that it was hard for Bam Bam to be snug in WWE, in general around that time. So it must have been like, a weight lifted off of his shoulders for him to go down to ECW and to work with somebody that really was interested in making him a star and wasn't focused on everybody else the way that Vince was. And he flourished in ECW, man. I personally hold Bam Bam. I think Bam Bam is one of the top, even though his reign is not very long. I think it's like a 40-something, 46-day reign or whatever as ECW champion. I think that he's probably one of the top 10, top 5 most important ECW champions ever because he solidified them. He legitimized ECW. You know what I'm saying? Like now ECW had a former WrestleMania main eventer holding the world title. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't because a lot of people talk shit, Bischoff, the WCW guys in general, like they call it the bingo hall and, this and that. And they try to shine a bad light on it. With Bam Bam, it was a little harder for them to talk shit. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, well, you're saying that your guy that you put in the main event of WrestleMania ain't shit, then, that's kind of contradicting. So I definitely feel like ECW got a huge bump from Bam. I think it was mutually beneficial for both of them. Bam Bam got to be, recognized for being a monster and all that, but he also helped ECW. So yeah, man, dude, you're so lucky for being able to see that Bam Bam and Pitbull #2 match, bro. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And one of the great things about ECW with everyone that passed through there, and Paul Heyman said it himself, he always would accentuate their greatness and hide their weaknesses. And that's what made everything about ECW so great, is he just let these guys do what they knew they were good at doing, and Bam Bam thrived off of that, off being able to be Bam Bam Bigelow, to be a beast, and it was great while it lasted, man. He was definitely a force to be reckoned with there.
Absolutely, dude. I loved his run in ECW, and like you said, it was great while it lasted. Unfortunately, it didn't last as long as it should have, or many of us would have loved for it to last. In 1998, he returns to WCW for the first time since 92 or 90. Actually, I think it was the last time he had been there for a stint. So he returns to WCW. This is the thing about WCW, like they had a decent idea at the beginning and then just kind of never really followed through with it, because they had him coming in as kind of like an outsider, basically, kind of almost in the NWO sense, but not really, because the NWO they made him look like they were invaders from WWE, where with Bam Bam they kind of just made him look like an outsider. He would come in and break up matches and stuff, and kind of cause havoc. And I remember his first big feud was with Goldberg, and Goldberg was like the world champion at the time, and I just remember thinking like, okay, here we go, dude. Like this is something I'm interested in. Goldberg versus Bam Bam, like this should be fucking dope. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then not saying that it was wrong or that he should have gone over, but I just feel like they kind of almost jobbed him out to Goldberg. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like they used him as just another chip, for Goldberg, another notch on Goldberg's belt, because they had him throw fucking Bam Bam around. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the matches that I'm talking about, but like Goldberg kind of manhandles Bam Bam a lot of times during their feud. But what do you think about that feud with Goldberg, his first big feud in WCW?
I think you're exactly right, and you hit the nail on the head that they just kind of whimpered it out. And at this point in time, Goldberg had pretty much plowed through everybody, and they were just looking for anyone to bring in that they thought people would see as a threat to him, and then just have him completely crush them. And I remember when Bam Bam showed up in WCW, and I was very excited And, that was the great thing about that era is, you didn't have Twitter and the internet like we do now, where there was always rumors swirling of who was going to show up where. So when Bam Bam showed up, it was a complete surprise to everybody. And it was great, because Bam Bam was definitely a fan favorite. And when they just had Goldberg pretty much, like you said, throw him around like a paper doll and crush him, it was very disheartening. And like you said, his career just kind of never really flourished in WCW like it should have.
Yeah, man, that was what I was going to talk about afterwards, because it's kind of like they heat him up, you get him real hot, feed him to Goldberg, and then it's like, okay, well, we don't really have a plan for you afterwards. He kind of is a staple of WCW's hardcore division in the early days, and then one of the things that I did like about his WCW run was the Jersey Triad faction that he had with DDP and Kanyon, and it actually starts when he starts teaming with DDP, and then they attack Raven and knock him out of like a tag team title match that they're supposed to be having. And Kanyon replaces him as Saturn's partner. And then Kanyon ends up turning on Saturn, and the Jersey Triad is formed. They implement the Freebird rule. So Bam Bam's technically, the three of them are the tag team champions. First title that Bam Bam actually holds in WCW was the tag team gold. Crazy to think, I'm going to backtrack just a little. Crazy to think he never holds gold in WWE. Not one time. They don't put any sort of title on him, which I think is fucking like criminal. I know the belt is just a prop, or a lot of people like to claim it that way, but I'm a big guy where like you should have the belt. You should have some. If you're that big a star, you should have some sort of belt at some point. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if it's just the IC title, like how they did with Roddy. At some point, you should have the belt. If you're that big of a star. Some people disagree. Some people agree. I don't know. I personally don't like that he didn't have it. He ends up winning the Hardcore Championship in WCW also, so that's his only singles title in WCW. But he's kind of treated almost, like I said, almost as a joke. He doesn't hold it for very long. He ends up dropping it to Brian Knobbs, and then kind of his WCW ends in a whimper. You know what I'm saying? WWF buys him out. He stays at home and finishes off his Time Warner contract. And I was personally a guy that I thought Bam Bam would pop up in WWE, and he never does, man. What do you think? Did you think Bam Bam was going to show up in WWE eventually after the buyout?
I always hoped he did, but I think everybody knew by this point that his body was pretty beat up. You could even tell towards the end of his run in WCW that he was feeling pretty beat up. He just wasn't moving the same, not as quickly and swiftly around the ring as he previously did. The Jersey Triad was great, though. It reminded me a lot of like the Triple Threat from ECW when he was with Shane Douglas and Chris Candido. Had that same feel to it. They could have did a lot more with that, but unfortunately that was in a time where WCW was kind of in a flux between creative. And it just, like you said, didn't really go anywhere. It was cool to see them get the tag team titles and use the free bird rule. And they could have definitely stuck with that for a long time, but just never happened. So, man.
I agree, dude. My favorite part of his whole WCW run, honestly, even including the beginning part where he's getting heated up to go against Goldberg, is the Jersey Triad. I love his days in the Jersey Triad. I feel like it just, I don't know, it just fit. And it's sad to think that the DDP's the only one left out of the three, man. It's it's kind of mind blowing.
Very sad.
It's mind blowing to think that, and it really sucks. But yeah, to your point, man, Bam Bam was kind of on his last legs at the end of his WCW run. He had already well documented back problems. Let's just put it this way, dude. He wasn't doing any cartwheels anymore. He wasn't as limber and as agile as he used to be. But he goes on to compete in the Indies after he around 2002, after his contract ends. He does a lot of independent shows all the way up to 2006, man. To the end of 2006, he's still competing on the indie circuit. And then unfortunately, on January 14th, 2007, Bam Bam is found dead in his house, apparently from an overdose of drugs. Also, he had heart disease, apparently. That I don't know if he had been diagnosed yet or not, but obviously in the autopsy they saw it. I don't know if Bam Bam knew or not, but he was in the early stages of heart disease. Only 45 years old, man. It's fucking mind blowing when you say when you see the age that he passed away at, because he's still so young, especially in today's wrestling environment. And it 40. I mean, AJ Styles is 41. You know what I'm saying? Like 42.
Yeah, you beat me to it. Yeah, like it's when you think about how old a lot of these guys are, even not even that, but just how long they've been doing what they've been doing, and the fact that they're still going at that rate is amazing. So, like you said, 45 is definitely very very young, especially in the world of wrestling, and it was definitely a shame. I mean, I remember that day, and it's. I'll man up and say it. I cried, man. I mean, it was definitely unexpected, and Bam Bam had always been a favorite of mine, and it was definitely heartbreaking to hear that news.
Oh yeah, me too, dude. It was definitely a shock for me. '07 is, I think it was senior in high school, so I was still, I was trying to act like I was too cool for wrestling, and I remember hearing the news, Bam Bam Bigelow passed away, and I was like, oh shit, like it hit me, you know what I'm saying? Like it made me feel something. Like I was like, oh shit, really, Bam Bam? Like, because Bam Bam was such a big part of my childhood, as far as like, I remember playing the WWF Raw video games, and Bam Bam was one of the characters, and I remember him and Luna, and there's a lot of memories that I have of Bam Bam. So when
And
it happened,
not only that, but he transcended wrestling. He was in TV shows and movies. Major Pain with Damon Wayans, where he shows up as the
oh
bounty
yes,
hunter. It's just, yeah, he transcended that level where he was known worldwide. I mean, he had such a unique look to him. There's some people that don't make it in wrestling because they don't look like a wrestler, and Bam Bam looked like a wrestler. I mean, he just looked like a guy you did not want to mess with.
absolutely, dude. I agree 100%. And like I said, it's sad, man. It's really sad to think about it. Gone way too soon. 45 years old is way too young. Like I said, another guy. Look at Chris Jericho, dude. He's what, 48, 49. He just main evented probably the best pay-per-view that we're gonna have this year. He main evented it, and he might end up being the first AEW World Champion. I don't know. Only time will tell. But like it's crazy to think 45. You like to think that maybe if he had rested up a little and healed up, maybe he still had another run in him at some point. But I guess it wasn't meant to be. But hey, man, now that the history lesson is done, let me ask you. We're gonna get to the fun part. These are the fun, pick 'em questions, and I always enjoy this part of the show. Let me ask you for 2 dream matches for Bam Bam Bigelow, dude. So I'm gonna ask you for one from back in the day, that he, anybody you would have loved to see him go against, and then I'm gonna ask you for a current day one. So what would you say is your back in the day dream match for Bam Bam?
From back in the day, like I said, the late '90s was definitely my favorite wrestling era, and I would have loved to see a feud between Bam Bam and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like if Vince would have brought in Bam Bam as his bounty hunter to take Stone Cold out. Oh man, that would have been so great. Those two would have had great chemistry in the ring, and it would have been a great match and a great feud.
Oh yeah, dude, definitely. That's, man, I'm kind of upset at myself for not thinking of that one, because yeah, that would have been. And you even booked the perfect storyline. Like all you had to do back in the day to get a feud with Austin is put him with Vince. You know what I'm saying? And a guy like Bam Bam, it would have made total sense in a kayfabe standpoint, from a storyline standpoint, that Vince would have gone for this behemoth to try to take out Austin. So man, I'm right there with you. I love that one. Me personally, I was gonna go with Flair. I would have loved to have seen him, Flair and Vader was such a great dynamic because of the size difference and because all of that. So I would have loved to have seen Flair go up against a guy like Bam Bam as well. I think that would have been pretty cool.
That would have been an amazing match for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, dude. I think Flair would have got a great match out of Bam Bam. But what would you say is your current day one?
There's a guy, in today's standards, that is just his style, his look, everything reminds me a lot of Bam Bam. If there was like a reincarnation of Bam Bam, I'd say it would be this guy here, and that'd have to be Kevin Owens. Those two would tear the house down.
Oh man, I fucking love that answer. Yes, KO, very agile for his size. Maybe not as big as Bam Bam, but I definitely understand what you're saying. The bruiser style, and KO's the guy where like same as with Bam Bam. Like I don't like to be like, I don't want to be that guy I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, I hope he goes to AEW and I hope he goes to AEW, because I understand, it's not realistic for everybody to leave and go to AEW. But Owens is one of those guys, man, where I'm just like, dude, can we get him out of the WWE system already? Because they've completely underutilized the fuck out of him. He's a one-time Universal Champion, and that's cool. But the entire Universal Championship run, they made him look like a fucking pussy. Where anybody that knows wrestling and anybody who knows him outside the walls of WWE knows that that's fucking Kevin Steen. That's one of the most dangerous fucking professional wrestlers in the last 10 years. And they treated him as so in NXT, especially upon his arrival, where he's just fucking apron powerbombing everybody, turning on Sami Zayn, and gets the title. But as soon as he got to the main roster, kind of to our point earlier, they started not, they kind of made him a chicken shit. Like Vince is just so
Well,
stuck.
no, I mean they brought him in great. I mean he beat John Cena in his debut WWE match. They made it look like they were going to make him something, which is what they do with a lot of these guys. And then Vince loses interest or changes his mind, and then they just go nowhere. And that's just per norm in the WWE anymore.
Yeah, that's true, man, and I hate it. I honestly, I don't like it. I wish, because KO, that's a great answer, bro. Him and KO would tear the fucking house down. I personally, I would have gone with a Finn Balor, only because I like the styles, differences, and I like the clash styles and just seeing how a big guy works with a little guy. And Finn's kind of like that ultimate little guy right now. Or Daniel Bryan. I think a babyface Daniel Bryan versus Bam Bam would have been awesome to see. To watch him chop him down. Also, a guy like Zack Sabre Jr. I just would have loved to have seen him against a guy that he's, way too big for, and watch that little guy chop him down, because I think Bam Bam was a really great seller at his peak. And then Bam Bam is like the kind of guy where, like, he got Lawrence Taylor over. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to make any of these guys that I just threw out, going to make them live like $1 million because of his size and because of his ability to sell and his agility, at his peak. Bam Bam was probably like I said, which is why I'm so surprised they never used him as a heel against Hogan, because to me, he's almost like the poster boy monster heel.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was always confusing to me as well, why he never got that, monster heel Hogan push, because his whole look just contrasted with Hogan. So it definitely didn't make sense that those two never worked together, really. So definitely a big miss on WWE's part back in the early 90s with that.
Absolutely, dude. All right, man. So we're at the point in the podcast where we're going to have some real fun now. We're going to play a little bit of name game. So I got these 3 categories, bro, and I'm going to throw some names at you and see where you compare them to Bam Bam Bigelow. The first category is we're going to do 400-plus pound guys. Bam Bam, as we said, is probably one of the most agile big men of all time, but we're going to see where he ranks against some of these other super heavyweights. So Bam Bam Bigelow or King Kong Bundy?
Man, I like King Kong Bundy, but I've got to go with Bam Bam here. Bundy was a big guy, but come on, man. Bam Bam had the flames tattooed on his head, and he could do a moonsault, and I definitely got to go with Bam Bam on that one.
Oh, trust me, bro. The flame tattoos on the head that's going to come into play in a little bit. And I'm right there with you, dude. I love Bundy, but Bam Bam could do things that nobody had ever seen a guy his size do at that time. Even Vader, because at that time, Vader wasn't prevalent in the States like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we hadn't really been introduced to Vader like that. So Bam Bam, for a lot of, like, domestic wrestling fans, was the first guy that size that people saw do agile stuff. So I'm right there with you, dude. It's Bam Bam for me. How about a guy from a little bit later on? How about Bam Bam or Umaga?
Oh, not Umaga. Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, because Umaga, when they really went with him, they made him a beast, and he was unstoppable. But I still got to go with Bam Bam. Definitely still got to go with Bam Bam. He was definitely ahead of his time with his movement and his size, and like you just said, he could do things in the ring that nobody else could. And Umaga, he was a beast in the ring, but he definitely could not move like Bam Bam could.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I agree. And Bam Bam had kind of a more sustained run, as in the main event picture, I guess you would say. Umaga was really hot for a while, but then they kind of cooled him down. How about this one? Bam Bam Bigelow or Akeem the African Dream, also known as the One Man Gang?
Oh no. Still Bam Bam on this. Yeah, I mean, Akeem the African Dream was kind of a joke character, really. A lot of comedic relief there. One Man Gang, of course, I think him and Bam Bam fought at in a tournament, right?
WrestleMania 4.
And I think didn't they go to a count out? I think.
Yeah, it was a count out. He ended
So
up So yeah, no,
yeah,
I feel you,
they
dude. I'm
definitely
right there.
clashed in the ring,
I'm right
but
there
still
with you,
got to go with
dude.
Bam Bam.
Yeah, to me it's Bam Bam too. The one thing that Akeem has Bam Bam in is he probably shakes his head a little bit better than him. You know, he has a little more rhythm. But
A little bit more funk on his side. Yeah.
absolutely, dude, absolutely. But yeah, no, I'm right there with you, dude. It's Bam Bam. What about this one? Bam Bam Bigelow or Yokozuna?
Now that's a hard one. This might be. This is definitely the hardest one. Because Yokozuna was unstoppable. In his prime. You know, he had his championship run, and until Hogan came back and threw his creative control in there, Yokozuna was on top of the world. I hate to do it because I love Bam Bam, but I think I got to go with Yokozuna on that one. You know, even Yokozuna was, you know, well over 400 pounds and could still move, not quite to Bam Bam's level, but for a guy of his size, he could still move in that ring. So, yeah, got to go with Yoko on that one.
Oh, I agree 100%, dude. I'm a Yoko guy because Yoko is really the first monster heel that I'm introduced to. But yeah, man, fucking Hogan, right? Hey, brother, what do you say if I go out there and I pin the champion right after he wins the title? Like, come on, fucking Hulkster, you didn't
Yeah.
have to do that. But